Finally, guys, I'm getting news. After 7 months, Lenovo finally released some info about the Go. Well, actually, not Lenovo. Leakers did about the Go 2. And this is what we're talking about today with the fantastic panel that I have here. Guys, how about you say hello if you want or not? I don't know. Whatever.
After 10,000 years, we're free. Welcome back, everyone. Yokoso.
Hello.
And hey, I'm Clef from Game Tech Talk. All right, so let's talk about the Legion Go 2. Now, it's been talked again. Finally, if you've seen the leak on Bilibili, actually, we saw a device that was now brought over from multiple sources on YouTube, as we are today. And so I'm going straight into the fire because we've had pretty much an entire generation of the Legion Go, with the Legion Go 2 now being thankfully closer to becoming a reality. Do you think it is in a better position to be a Steam Deck killer? Specifically, a Steam Deck OLED, actually, I will add.
A Steam Deck OLED killer. Yeah, I think the Steam Deck is old news, honestly, at this point. And I felt that way for a while. When I sold my Steam Deck, I never looked back. And that's just because the playability of being able to just go into any game in your library or any store is just huge. And when we have things like, an Xbox interface coming out and a SteamOS on the Legion Go, you're going to be able to do that on the Legion Go 2. For sure, Valve's going to allow us to do that. So with those interfaces implemented, I don't think that we're reason to believe why this isn't a Steam Deck killer at some point here.
I gotta say, if Gaming for Insight was there, you would probably say, no, it is the Steam Deck 2. Gamer Generation, what is your take? Is that finally to be considered to be a Steam Deck OLED killer in your
barking up the wrong tree there, Clef? Remember, the Steam Deck 2 is whatever you make of it. And that's, I think the sentiment that a lot of people are probably wondering when they're thinking, where's my Steam Deck 2? We had a bunch of people in our Discord, which you should definitely join, by the way, if you are a handheld enthusiast like anyone here. They were talking about the Steam Deck 2, and they asked me if I knew anything about Steam Deck 2. Obviously, I don't know Gabe, and so I have nothing to share. But as Nelly said, I kind of feel like, the days were numbered for the Steam Deck, particularly Steam Deck OLED, which was, holding out and keeping its last stand for Valve. But I think especially now with the Legion Go S, we were just talking about this before we went live. Right now on Best Buy in the US, for example, the Legion Go S Windows variant, which has 32 gigs of RAM, with the Z2 Go, which is slightly more performant than the Steam Deck, is $500 now. So given that I know that's the sale price, it's going to come back to that price again. And, open box, if you're willing to play that game, it will go even lower. This means that you're getting price comparable to a Steam Deck. Yes, you lose the OLED, but you get a little bit larger screen, a little bit more battery, and, a lot more flexibility, just as Nelly said again. So I think we are looking at this future where, I don't know, it might put into question, what the real Steam Deck 2 might actually be when it comes out. If I had to guess, I would think that they're probably waiting till RDNA 4 in our handheld space, but that's anyone's guess.
Fair. Absolutely fair. And I like that you pointed out price, which, considering that we don't really know what the Go 2 is going to cost, if it's to be a Steam Deck killer, price is going to be a pretty important factor, even though I also agree with Nelly that it's kind of old news at this point, but it's still relevant. And it is still the entry point if you want OLED specifically, which has its own benefits beyond just performance, right? Anyways, talking about performance, as we all know, there's a quite substantial bump between the Z1E and the Z2E, which, at least according to the original publications from Lenovo, should be in the Go 2. So do you think that the jump that we get in performance, for specifically addressing to the people who have a Go 1, do you think it's a leap that is important enough to justify buying a new device, getting into that new generation, or it's more for newcomers interested in PC handhelds? So let's start with you, Nelly.
So the performance bump, yes, I think it does. And I say that because of the 16 gigs of RAM, mostly, to the 32. And when I was playing my Legion Go, and I don't have it anymore, I sold it to a friend. He's super happy with it now. But when I had it, I found that there was super limitations in the games that I wanted to play with that 16 gigs of RAM. Like the performance just wasn't quite there. Like it was struggling on some of those games. And I think that RAM increase is a better increase really of what you're going to get for the performance of the games than that higher increase of the actual Z2, which again is still going to give you a better increase, but that RAM is going to be like significant, I feel like, for the performance.
Fair. How about you, Gamers Generation?
Yeah, I agree completely. That RAM bump is a big deal. It's actually a much bigger deal than people even realize. And, you know, once again, going back to like the Z2 Go being $500 when on sale, that might actually be a more compelling choice than even like the original Z1 Extreme. And the example I'm going to give there is, you know, self-shill here. There's a video that I'm working on the Morphine 4090M. What I did was I was trying to test Monster Hunter Wilds, and actually it just crashes on the Z1 Extreme Legion Go, but it will run on the Z2 Go, you know, Legion Go S, and it will run on a 7840U Win Mini that I have. So, you know, 16 gigs is not enough. I'm sure you could, like, you know, tweak the INI files or whatever type of thing to get it to work, but the point is it's not working out of the box. And so if that's the case, you know, some people don't want to bother with that. So I think, just as Nelly said, I think, you know, generally speaking, we're probably expecting around like 20-ish% performance boost usually. And that's probably being a little bit more optimistic too. That's not going to convince everybody depending on like what game you're playing. But if like the Legion Go was your go-to device and, you know, that was exactly what you wanted, and now you want something that is better than it in every single way, this is probably it.
Okay, I like both of your answers, but I'll have something for you both in a minute. But before we do that, I do want to address also, for the people that don't know, when moving to the Z2E, always assuming that it's exactly like the HX370, which previously have suggested that it is, you're also going to have a lot of performance in the lower TDP. So that's, you know, there are devices, for example, the A1X from Aoki Zoe that has a larger battery and that chip. But if we look at the main players in the scene, so ASUS, MSI, Lenovo, it's going to be the first time that we have a device that has a larger battery and is able to stay well within like 15 watt TDP and greatly improved performance versus the Z1E. So that's going to be interesting also to consider as a jump. But indeed, I think the RAM is also going to be a great benefit. And if we go back to specs in general, one thing that came out of that article is that the models that we have that have leaked is apparently engineering samples. And so with that, nothing confirms that this is what we're actually going to get in the final product. This could change. I mean, there are things I feel is just set in stone. For example, the OLED panel, I think everyone would probably agree, since Lenovo announced that back in January. That's pretty much a given. Now, if the specs were to be different, for example, if we were to go from 32 gigabyte to 24 gigabyte, do you guys feel like that could impact the general opinion of the public? Gamers Generation, how about we start with you?
Oh, I mean, I don't know about the public. That definitely changes my opinion. I mean, that drop from 32 gigs to 24 gigs is exactly what we're seeing from, you know, the Xbox Ally X. I mean, technically that's just like a lateral move from them, since the Ally X already has 24 gigs. But if I'm not mistaken, like the Claw AI 8 has 32 gigs of RAM.
No, 24.
Yep.
No.
Sorry. The Intel. Okay.
The AI 8. Yeah, I know the names are terrible. The 258 the 258V Intel version has 32 gigs. So I mean, I know they're not like the same, you know, chipset, but technically like it's going down, you know, 8 gigs of RAM. And that 8 gigs of RAM is actually like essentially your VRAM. Right? So if you are putting 8 gigs of VRAM, which we're seeing on the desktop side is already like not sufficient. If in the BIOS you can enable something like 12 gigs of VRAM, that's going to give you that much, going to get you that much more longevity or that much further when these games are not optimized in terms of their texture. So what are we talking about? We're talking about essentially, you know, handicapping your Windows installation from, you know, let's say 16 gigs of RAM when it could have 20. right? So, and that might be the difference between like having a stuttery mess and making it unplayable versus it actually running properly.
I love what you just said. And before we move to you, Nelly, that's the thing that I've been thinking about, is maybe that's why those engineering samples had 32 gigabytes. It's because they were going to be in showrooms and they don't want it crashing. They don't want stutter. And so that's why I'm thinking, does it guarantee that we'll have that in the, the retail units? What is your stance on the matter? Do you think it would change your opinion, Nelly, if they were to change specifically the RAM configurations?
It might change my mind on which one I want to pick up, because like I rudely interrupted Gamers Generation. The MSI version of the A8 whatever, that one is 24 gigs. It's the same as the Xbox Ally X. And I mean, 24 gigs is great, but if you want to come in as Lenovo, why not come up at that step? Because you're probably already going to ask a little bit more for the OLED panel. So why not add that little bit extra value and say, hey, we're also going to give you some more RAM too?
There is one thing that makes me think this could be the case, and I think you're right on the money, Nelly, is if we think of the generation with the Ally X, and Go, the Legion Go was actually that one device. It was easy to forget, but it was that one device that closed the gap a little more with the Chinese handhelds, by having, for example, USB 4 and being able to work with eGPUs, for example. That's something that the original Ally didn't have. And also having, just the different configurations and everything. So I feel like they were trying to offer more. I think that's a great point, Nelly. And I could see them doing that. Hopefully, what we see here is not, for showrooms, but rather for what consumers will have in the future. Okay, now we've all experienced the Legion Go. And I don't know for you guys, originally when it came out and the detachable controllers, the mouse mode, all these things, they kind of didn't feel like that much. It was cool, don't get me wrong, but was it truly a benefit? To me, it was kind of questionable at first. And then we had this whole period of using the device. Do you feel like something like the tabletop and detachable controllers will remain important for, well, both of you, of course, but also for consumers, Gamers Generation? What's your take?
First of all, how dare you, sir, question my Legion Go and the fact that it can do everything. It is the do-it-all device, and that's why it's always go time. I mean, I know that people weren't, like, some people were kind of just on the fence about like the FPS mode or what I call, the RTS, or like strategy puzzle mode. I get that some people, like, not a lot of people use that, and I'll be the first one to admit that I don't always use that because I'm not always sitting at a table. But the fact that you have that ability to do that, and as Handheld Hardware actually pointed out to me before too, you can actually use each of the Go-Cons separately, as like individual Joy-Cons when you're playing a certain type of emulation, which will remain nameless too. Like, that's possible. And that's what's really cool about it, that these things can operate as like separate individual controllers. And to me, it just provides this extra level of versatility, which really does set the Legion Go apart for being this more like a hybrid type of device. I think for the Legion Go 2 in particular, like, if we see that exact same design language is carried over from what we saw in CES, we can probably expect that, they're going to keep with that. But I think I've said this in a previous episode too, whereby because they have the Legion Go S now, depending on what the sales are for that, I kind of feel like maybe they're not so great, hence the price cuts. They could realistically, if they get enough uproar from the public saying, they don't care about detachable controllers or 8.8 inches is too big or whatever, they could easily just drop a Z2 Extreme into one of those. And it's just, a Legion Go, I don't know, S2 or something. Please don't say
X.
Legion Go S.
It's an X. Legion Go X.
Oh no, or don't, or Legion Go SX, they'll have Microsoft knocking on their doors. I just think that they're providing a lot of options here for their audience, which is really great, right? Because we all love choice, and that's probably one of the fundamental issues that I see with like the upcoming Xbox Ally launch. And I know that like somebody in the audience is like, if they actually watch any of my stuff, they're going to be like, you just hate ASUS. Like, no, like, that's not true at all. I actually love a lot of the ASUS products I have. Like, I'm working off of an ASUS motherboard and GPU right now. The thing is, though, is like, there's not a lot of variance in that product stack when, even when the Xbox Ally comes out, because we have the Ally, we have the Ally X, we have Xbox Ally, Xbox Ally X. Those are all 7-inch devices. You know what I mean? So if someone loves the Xbox Ally, but they want a bigger screen, well, they already have no choice.
Fair. Right? So to the viewers, the shill segment from Gamers Generation just ended. No, just kidding, of course. But I like where you took it, and I kind of want to modify the question a little bit for Nelly, which is, to the point of Gamers Generation, if Lenovo was to introduce 2 SKUs, one where you have, the typical Go detachable controller and mouse mode, and another where you don't, and of course the price would be more appealing, and that's the only difference, which one would you go for and why?
Ooh, that's a tough question. And the screen's the same size. The
screen specs, storage, APU, all the same. The only difference is you don't have the detachable controllers, the mouse mode, the kickstand. Like everything that makes it go from handheld to tabletop, you lose.
I'd probably still take the detachable just to have the option. And like with my devices, like let's say the X1, because that's probably the closest thing that I have to this biggest screen for the Legion Go 2. It's still heavy. I like to set it down on the table sometimes, but you know what? I can hold it for over an hour and still be totally fine too, because I've already been lifting weights with that thing for the last year. So I'm ready for this Legion Go 2 that's even heavier. So
you've been bulking up.
I've been bulking up for this thing. I'm just waiting. It's go time. I'm with a headband on after this, get on the bike and like get ready. But I like the option to put it on the table, and I don't really use the mouse mode. I tried it once on Fortnite, and my nephew's like, Auntie, can you just please switch back to keyboard and mouse? And I'm like, you got it, man. And then we won the next match. So, I don't mind having the detachable controllers and then being able to set even like a half keyboard to the side and a mouse to the side so that you just have it closer to you on a table like format, instead of having the controllers on the side that gives you an extra width. So then you're spread further apart. So I like the option, the versatility that you can have with the detachable controllers. It's a nice feature for me. Also like compact, like if you want to pack it up, like you can kind of get it into like a nice tighter space instead of a really long space. If you're, attached with an 8.8-inch screen.
Totally. And I'm completely 100% with you. Some things changed during the lifespan of the Go. However, for me, just the fact of having the options, as you said, Nelly, is just, it holds so much value, even if I'm not going to use that feature all that much. That being said, and I'm surprised our resident expert of XR didn't talk about that, but one thing that completely transformed my perception of the Go is that to this day, it's the only PC handheld that is absolutely perfectly designed to pair so great with XR glasses. You can just detach it, have it on the table, and lay on your back like I usually do and play with your controllers. And it's absolutely glorious. Nothing else quite does it as nicely as the Go. And, yes, you could say you can use Joy-Cons, but they're not the same quality. They're not the same protocol. So that's a huge benefit that it has. So thank you very much for your inputs, both of you. But
I didn't forget, by the way. I was just waiting. I was just waiting for you to give the opening for that. If you're a crazy person like me, you can actually detach the controllers, put on your Quest headset, and then play like your flat games, meaning that it's just streamed directly to your Quest headset and just walk away with those Legion Go controllers. Like that's possible. You can't do that with your other handhelds.
It's wild. And then each controller have gyro. Like they're not lacking any feature. The trackpad, I will say, kind of sucks, if I'm being honest. And unfortunately, unless it changes, because I was at CES, I got to hold the Legion Go 2, which feels amazing, by the way. Everything was improved on those controllers except the trackpad. But I still appreciate having it rather than not being the case. I just wish it clicked, but it doesn't. So
yeah, I'm on board. Despite being the resident Go shill, I do agree the trackpad could use some improvement. Like it would be nice if it was literally just like the Steam Deck trackpad on there, or I wanted to like the Legion Go S's optical track button thing a little bit more, but like it's not like the ThinkPad optical like red nose thing. Like if it was just that, actually that would be pretty good, I think.
Let's be real though, the only thing we all really want is to have the select and start up top, right?
It's they gotta get it right this time. Like they have to.
It's a must.
when they release this, they have to have the controller attachment, right? Like you got to release it with the controller attachment. You can't mess this up this time.
I mean, it's backwards compatible, I believe. So like
yes,
same
it should work with.
Yes, actually, I'm happy you brought that up because I don't know if it was confirmed by Lenovo, but it was pretty much said across the board that there was a great likeliness that they would even sell the Legion Go controllers for people that didn't want to upgrade the main unit but wanted to have the improved ergonomics and buttons overall, because you have hair triggers as well, right? Which you don't have on the Go 1. So there's a couple of extra improvements on there as well.
They should they should definitely do that, because theoretically speaking, like Go 1 owners then could just pick up a separate pair. Now they technically have 4 Go Cons type of things, right?
With the middle attachment, please.
Yes.
Like we want it.
I mean, you can buy it now. It's just usually out of stock.
Yeah, but it's the kind, like, I went off on OXP for not including it for the X1 Mini and X1 Pro. Like, how do you do that? How do you call it a 3-in-1 and not include the main component to be what you're claiming?
That's not a fair comparison. I've been very harsh on 1X Player before, but I mean, I'm particularly harsh on the controller because those things do not work without the attachment.
That's what I'm saying.
Yeah, that's where you get the weight back. Is like the controllers are so light.
I get that. I'm just saying, like, the Go Cons work without an attachment,
which they're amazing. I got to give them credit. That's a great implementation. But with all that, and there's another rumor that does not come with the one that just released from Bilibili, but a rumor nonetheless, which points toward $1,100 to $1,200 USD for the price. I mean, we're talking about all these great things, but if they drop that huge price tag, are you grabbing one? $1,200 USD, would you? Nelly, let's start with you.
I mean, I spent over $2,000 for my Ava edition, like 255H. That was like 2,600 Canadian. Like, it was very expensive. Actually, it might not have been that high. It might have been like 2,400, but it was still very expensive. So yes, I definitely would. I'm going to pick up one of these 3 units, but like, which one? To be determined. It depends on the specs across the board. But if they've got that 32 in there, I would take that over the 24. Like, that, I would.
Fair. Absolutely fair. How about you, Gamer Generation? 1,200. What do you do?
I'm never going to financially recover from this. I mean, I think Nelly again has it on point. I think if we're going by the most recent rumors and leaks, I think they put the Xbox Ally X at like €900, which is probably going to be about 900 US, 950 US is typically like the numbers have some kind of parity, even though the currencies are not. And then, the recent thing we saw about the Claw A8 Plus coming in, I think about like 865 after conversion from Taiwan dollars. So if we said, I honestly think that that's too low for the A8, but if we assume that, let's pretend the Claw is actually $900, like at the lowest end, and we said that the Legion Go is $1,200, I think that in that extreme case, like, it is a little bit harder of a sell for the Go 2, particularly for someone who just wants to jump in specifically just to get like the performance of the Z2 Extreme. For me personally, like, if I'm in that position when it does come out and I can afford it, I think that that's worth the extra $300 for that RAM, for that OLED screen, and for the versatility that we were talking about. And I mean, battery is going to be like comparable, right? But for the screen and the RAM, I think that, and the versatility, those are the 3 things I think that are worthwhile for me. Obviously, it would be much nicer if like the price difference was only like $150. You know what I mean? That's like the decision that I'm looking at.
That's actually a great point that you brought up, because the OLED, what they said originally is, as we know, it's going to be, OLED, 144 hertz. They're dropping the resolution. However, you have a higher DPI. Yeah, you have a higher DPI on the Go 1 versus what you'll have on the Go 2, but then you're getting OLED. There's less light leakage from per pixel, so it's still going to look extremely sharp with those vibrant colors and deep blacks. But it's also a landscape panel, so for people doing a lot of emulation, that's another benefit. And there's something about having an improvement in panel that just gives you that general feel of an upgrade, which is something that we will not have with the Xbox Ally and the Xbox Ally X. It's been pretty much confirmed by anyone that touched it that we're looking at the same panel. Great point. All right, and Nelly also brought a great point, so much so that this is how we're going to end, because I really want to pick your brains when it comes to this. Out of the 3 devices that we know to be sporting at least some kind of variation of the Z2E, being the MSI, being the ASUS, and Lenovo, do you feel like you're at a point where, I mean, you did mention the 32 gigabyte, of course, but are there more details up there that makes you lean towards a decision versus the other? Gamers Generation, let's start with you.
Am I like being? Am I supposed to answer this under duress, or like can I?
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely. I'm holding the plug to your computer, so answer, or I'm gonna pull it.
I guess it depends then. Like, which one of these companies is watching this stream? I'm just kidding. I'm just kidding. Oh. Yeah, I mean, like, you know, I've been very openly transparent, I think, about my love for the Legion Go. I think this is an amazing device. I've not had hands-on with the MSI Claw. I have also said in the past that I think that 8-inch panel is kind of a sweet spot. But, like, I'm also at this part of my life now where I value more of, like, a hybrid or more versatile device. And so, like, that's where I think, like, 8.8-inch screen is probably going to be more useful for that, because if I wanted to, I could probably just use it as a tablet for my kids or whatever type deal. Whereas, like, 7-inch, I'm sorry, Ally. I know, again, people are saying that I'm an ASUS hater. Unfortunately, this kind of follows in line with that. I'm kind of done with 7-inch screens. I feel like unless it's like a retro device or something, I'm not like... I don't feel like squinting or needing a new, glasses prescription just to like play my, AAA game, because I can't see what's going on the screen. So, old man eyes, I prefer something that's easier to see. So if I really had to choose and it wasn't the go-to, then like I would put the Claw after that next. But it's probably also dependent on MSI Center, because, M Center, I think, is still very much in its infancy.
Agreed. And how about you, Nelly? Other than the 32 gigabytes of RAM, of course, is there other points that would make you go towards another?
So I mentioned how much I would spend on a device because it's extremely high, but that's Canadian, just so we're clear. That's in Canadian, not US dollars. So I did the currency exchange real quick at 1,200. That's like 1,650 Canadian. Still less than overseas handhelds at HX 370, like for what you're getting. So you're still getting a great bang for your buck. Plus you get the storefront, option. Anyways, enough about that. I love the interface on the Ally. That's my favorite interface. If I could just have that interface, like with Armory Crate, because I feel like they do the best job on the actual like integration. And also that for updates and stuff, they push through the stuff the quickest. Like for the driver updates, even the compatibility with eGPUs, they pushed out that update before Lenovo, and it's still been like a month and a half, nothing from Lenovo. Like no updates on the new driver to be able to be compatible. Right now, people are installing the Ally driver from ASUS, like to their Legion Go to make this work. And I don't like that. That's like one of the biggest negatives that I have. But that being said, I would take that 8-inch screen OLED and the 32 gigs of RAM, if that is the 32 gigs of RAM. Maybe a little bit smaller battery. I'm okay with that because the OLED's going to add some power efficiencies to that device. The other thing I really would like to know is that slot for the hard drive going to be a 2280? Because if I'm stuck with that short drive, I think I saw somebody posted the 2242, 4 terabyte, it's $600. I'm not going to spend $600 on a 4 terabyte little mini drive. So like those are all things that we have to factor in. Is that 2 terabyte going to be enough for you? Do you have to spend more to upgrade your drive? Like those are all things that we need to put together. So if I had to make a decision, I might go with the MSI Claw, like just for that bigger screen. And that green is so cool. Like the green's cool.
I do like the colors. I agree.
The green is cool.
Yep.
All right. How much did Joe pay you to say that?
I like the green. I like the green, but I honestly will probably get the Legion Go too. That's probably what I'll end up getting. I would be really interested to know if that panel is actually a like native landscape or if it's portrait.
It is.
Boy, those. Is it native landscape?
It is native landscape.
That's huge. That's huge. You know what? I go with the Legion Go 2.
Well, I was just about to interject and say I hope Lenovo is watching, because I see the panel on the back off and it looks like a 2280, Nelly.
I hope it is.
And
I hope that's what we actually get.
Yeah, and like on top of that, I was just gonna add that I think that when we're talking particularly about the Legion Go and comparing it to the MSI Claw in particular, like I know 0.8 inches doesn't seem like a lot. Hey, no memes here. But like, you know, we are talking. That's like 10. That's depending on how you want to cut the math. That's like a 10% size difference in the screen versus, you know, the MSI Claw.
Fair.
And so like it's not nothing, because you imagine if your phone that you had was 0.8 inches larger diagonally, like your phone is either like not usable single-handedly or it's like too small. Right. So, I mean, that does make a difference, despite like, you know, what people might think just going by the paper specs. And the other thing I wanted to say was, you know, I know Clef mentioned that, you know, this is 1200p panel versus the Legion Go 1 1600p panel. The thing is like originally, if I hadn't had hands-on experience with the Steam Deck OLED, I would have thought like, yeah, oh, you know, losing that 400p of resolution like that, you know, that's bad. You know, the thing is like, if you look at the Steam Deck OLED and how nice that panel is, even though it's an 800p panel, like it's not even, I don't even think that's an issue. We're dealing with panels that are like, you know, they're not to the size of like a full-size monitor, and so like people can't, like, it's harder sometimes to just like look at numbers and say that, oh, it's going to be this or that. Like you do have to experience it firsthand to really make a good judgment of it.
Honestly, I think I'm done with the 7-inch screens. I'm done with them. They're just too small. They're just too small.
Yes.
Man, again, I don't get it. I'm done with screens. I'm going I'm going Xbox Ally X, because the big selling feature for me, which I think we probably all expect that it'll move to the Go 2 or move to the Claw at some point, but I don't think it's going to be day one. It's going to be that front-facing Microsoft implementation to have that gaming-centric operating system, which I think I don't know. I'm betting a lot on that. I think it's really going to be a game changer for gaming specifically on those devices. And for that reason, because, you know, we talked a couple of weeks ago about what I thought the prices were going to be. And the leaks seem to suggest that I'm a little wrong, just a little bit though, but not a whole lot, but, you know, just a little bit. But if truly they sell it for, was it what, like 1,050 that's been leaked, give or take, for the Ally X? That would mean that ASUS is probably not going to be making money off of software. So they probably have an exclusivity deal. If they don't make money out of software, they must have an exclusivity deal to be able to say we're the only ones that can do that for 6 months, a year.
Yeah.
I want that device. Lenovo, MSI, kiss my ASUS. Let's stop. All right. And so that is it for the episode. Let us know what you guys think. Which one would you get? Let us know in the comments. And as always, thank you very much for watching, and we'll see you on the next one. Peace out, guys.
Dance out.